Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
All right, welcome to this week's Collective Genius Podcast, the podcast where real estate investors come to grow and scale their business. I've got a treat for you this week. It's funny how this continues to work. Each week I happen to have a CG member. Got a few of them. Got to get through this. I think this is episode 10, and we've got 500 members across the United States and across the world. But this conversation you will truly enjoy. Not only because Jeff and his partners in Chicago are some of the best investors in our group, but they're also some of the best humans in our group. And one of the reasons our community is so great because of members like Jeff and Kevin and his crew there in Chicago. So let me start by officially welcoming my guest for this week, CG member based out of Chicago, Mr. Jeff Nydegger. Welcome in, my friend.
Leon, awesome. Thanks for doing this. And I'm excited to talk all about how the Collective Genius has impacted us and our journey. And let's get into it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for
that. You're welcome. This is, as I said to you in prep, this is what I like to call conversations with a genius. And I know our members are very humble, but there's so many great things that our members not only do in the investment world, but how they're able to impact the community in which they live in and beyond. So there's so much good there that we can get into. But why don't we start here? I mentioned out of the gates, you and your partner, based in Chicago, Chicagoland. Let's start there. What is it that you do? Your niche in real estate investing and the markets in which you serve. Let's start there.
Yeah, well, as you said, all Chicagoland. So we say Chicagoland in Chicago. So we're actually, I always say, hey, when people say, where are you from? I say, well, we're Chicago. And then once they kind of hone in on where Chicago's at, I said, well, we're actually about 50 miles west of there. So it's a suburb. Actually, our office looks out at a cornfield. So I call this kind of the last standing suburb before you get to Iowa, which happens to be where I'm from. But so we serve Chicagoland, direct to seller advertising company, marketing company. We buy houses, directly from homeowners that are looking to sell for speed, convenience, comfort, and to a trusted brand. So that's all we do in its simplest form is buy, renovate, and go back to the retail market, or some we sell to an investor. We try not to overcomplicate things, which is hard sometimes. But in a nutshell, we're buying all over in about 7 counties in the greater Chicagoland area.
It's funny that you mentioned that with Chicago, because I have found that a lot of major metro cities across the United States, you're driving long distances through farmland and wheat fields and cornfields, and all of a sudden here comes this big metropolis. And Chicago is that. Having been a kid that grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, Northeast Kansas, and had to drive to my grandparents every summer to spend my summers in Illinois just outside of Chicago, only once a year did we get to go into that big metropolis. All I knew was farmland in Illinois, but all of a sudden here comes this big city, and it's a great city. One of my favorite cities in the United States. And what people I don't think know and understand is how big it is in the suburbs, as you mentioned, Chicagoland, how many people that you serve. Because you really don't, you buy in the city, but mostly it's the suburbs, correct?
It's mostly the suburbs. The city is a whole different, as you said, it's so huge. The city's a whole different animal, and we're not even going to act like we grew up there. We know that area. Of course, like anybody would say, you can get on MLS and pull comps and come up with a value, but it's so different street to street. You've got a $80,000 house here, and then 2 blocks there, you've got an $800,000 house. And so it is so block to block. So when you're talking to a true Chicagoan, they will ask you what that nearest intersection is, and you better know, because it makes all the difference. And I don't mean just because if you are a Cubs fan or a Sox fan, but so most of the properties we're buying are going to be direct to seller. They're all direct to seller, but they're going to be out in the suburbs. And you kind of go from O'Hare down to Midway, which are in Chicago, but they're kind of ways out. And then we go west and north and south from there. But the Gold Coast stuff is a little more difficult. But yeah, it's a Midwest market, which is, like you said, it's right in our wheelhouse, right? From the type of people, and we're all Midwest people here in the office. And Kevin, my business partner, grew up in Kansas and then Ohio, and then moved here about 30 years ago. And but all Midwest, so that's what we know.
Well, for those that love New York, if they've never gotten a chance to check out the big metropolis that is Chicago, it is worth a trip. I used to take a summer Wrigley trip every single year. A little different now that I'm in Florida, but I definitely need to make sure I get back in the summer for sure. Not the winter, but the summer for sure.
Yeah, what a place, man. Going to Wrigley, or even to where the White Sox play now with,
yes,
I don't even know what it's called, guaranteed rate field. They just sold out the rights again, but it's we've got some great sports up here. Albeit they don't do all that well over the last few years, but exciting teams to watch. A lot of sports going on, and I think like most older towns, you've got some pretty loyal, whether they're Sox or Cubs or Blackhawks or Bears, Bulls. I mean, they're pretty loyal to their thing. They stick around. That's what we love about the loyalty of the Midwest type people. They just kind of go with what they know for a long time.
Yeah, love that. And I always tell people that I may live in the South, but I'm from the Midwest. So let's start with that. I should say, let me rewind. We started with, where you are, what you do, what you focus in. We'll get to the business and how it's grown and scaled, but I love these conversations because I get to learn more about the person and where you started out. You mentioned that you grew up in Iowa. What did little Jeff in Iowa, if he was calling into a show, what would he have said that he saw himself that he wanted to be? What is it that little Jeff in Iowa wanted to be?
Oh, I think like most young athletes, we all wanted to be a professional athlete at some point in time. Although my boys have never mentioned that really. I think they think that that's not what they want to do. So maybe it's just a 70s and 80s, maybe early 90s thing. I don't know. But I spent a good bit of time playing sports. I mean, I love to compete. I still love to compete. But I wanted to play baseball, and I'm kind of a black sheep. When you grow up in Iowa, there's no professional sports teams. So people go to Kansas City for the Chiefs or the Royals. They go to Minnesota for the Twins, or they come out here, go out east to Chicago. Well, I'm kind of the black sheep, so I chose the Yankees. Just because Don Mattingly was my favorite player.
Yeah.
So
in the 80s, in the early 90s, man, he was Mr. Yankee during those bad years.
I just followed him so closely, so tightly. After my dad threw me out of the house. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, almost though. Yeah, but I'm a guy that, when I pick something, it's kind of like being married, but I just stick with them. People are like, why are you a Steelers fan? I'm like, I don't know. I've just loved them since I was a little kid and never took off my Bradshaw jersey and just wore it forever. And so I'm going to be a fan for theirs forever. So, but little Jeff, as you said, I wanted to be an athlete. My mom always said you should be an attorney because you love to argue. And I don't know if that's every mom said, but it was really true. I wouldn't let anything just be the way it was. I think they would still say that today, not just because I wanted to challenge everything, but I thought that it could always be better, which becomes pretty annoying sometimes. Ask my wife.
It can be annoying, but man, it serves you well. Knowing you, you're probably the one person in the room, and there may be a couple, but you're definitely one of them that is always asking that last question, because that question is not just to talk. That question is to learn with the intention of learning. That is definitely a superpower of yours, which we'll get to later. But I can say from knowing you, that is a superpower.
Yeah. And so, we just grew up in a Midwest lower middle income. My mom was a school secretary for 30 some years. My dad was a school custodian for 30 some years. And they were just really, really loyal, hardworking, blue collar, people that have a great reputation. And I watched them, continue to just work and be committed to their family, but being committed to their school system, really, and their job. And I didn't realize that as much as a kid as I did over the last maybe 10 years. Now they're both retired. But as an adult, you have this look back on your upbringing and you thought, where did you get your style, or where did you get your work ethic, or, whether that's good or bad. Some of it's not positive. Mine's positive, and they didn't make much money, but man, they are well known. people love my folks, and were very, very consistent. And I think that even though they didn't teach it with their words, they did with their actions over, all of my life. And it's taught me a lot to live up to, even though I own a business and maybe have been more financially successful. It's because of the qualities of the upbringing, right? And instilled those things into me all the way through into the military, et cetera. So,
yeah. Isn't that so awesome that gift of consistency, legacy that your parents, what a gift they gave you. Are your parents still with us?
Yep. Mom and dad are still there, still in the same house 50 years later. And I've got one sister. She actually lives out here. She's about an hour north of here. So we're here in the Chicago market, and they're back in small town Iowa, west of Des Moines, still watching Jeopardy and eating bluegill and whatever. So, yeah,
whatever they catch on that day, right?
Life's easy for them.
The only reason I ask is, and often, I tell people, and maybe it's just for my own reminder to thank those that have given you those gifts as often as you can, because it really molded you for, us having this conversation today. Like, without that consistency and that love, you wouldn't be here where you are, the success that you've built, to this point, and that you'll continue to build. So love hearing those stories of great parents, because not every kid is gifted with great parents,
So true. And it's a great point to make. And sometimes I, not forget that, but let that go to the side. But in my heart, I always know, like, don't forget what got you here, or what contributed. It may not be the thing. All right. There's lots of things, and then our own will to do what we got to do. But, they're still very interested in what we're doing. They don't quite understand it, even though I explain it to them. They continue to ask me how there's so many foreclosures that we buy, because they think it's 2008. But no, like when we get done with this show, like, she's going to want to see this. My mom will want to see this and listen to it, and she'll probably critique it because I used improper grammar or something. But no, it's all good. They still want to be involved, and still proud of their son and their daughter, and I still want to make them proud. I'm still their son, and I want to show them what they're up to, or what we're up to. So,
well, as they should be proud. And I'll say hi to Mom right now as she's listening to this. And hopefully watching it on YouTube as well. Get to see your son. Your son's done very well, by the way. So now let's transition. You now have at some point realized that this dream, like me, of being a professional athlete isn't going to happen.
Shoot.
So what's planned? What's planned? We still play, and you're a very competitive person. I've seen it on the court many, many a time. So am I. When did plan B come in, and what was that?
Yeah, well, after high school, we all had to make a decision, right, what we're going to do. Or not, I guess we all didn't have to. Most of us made a decision to how we're going to progress in life and contribute to society. For me, I thought I was a good enough athlete to go maybe play college sports, and that really wasn't in the cards. I probably should have paid a little more attention to the grade point average, which probably would have helped me contribute to some athletic. But that didn't work out. So I actually went right in the military. So 6 days after I graduated high school, I left for the Army. And really, I think about this now differently than I did then, of course. But, I really never came home. I left and never came back. I got married, and we were on our way to our life. And I'm not sure my parents were thinking that was the case. I don't know that they prepared for, 6 days after high school for me to leave. But that was, almost 25 years ago. So, yeah, went right in the military. And, after that was during September 11th. And so it ended up being where I was the first round of soldiers in Kuwait that were deployed and breached the line between Kuwait and Iraq in 2003. So spent a good bit of time in the military. I signed up for 4, ended up serving 5.5, almost 6 years. And that led to about 30 months of deployment from Iraq, a little bit of home time. I was supposed to head to Ranger School, and that got canceled. And they said, nope, you're going to Afghanistan. You got combat experience. And so it was actually a really good opportunity for me to grow up as a young wasn't a troubled kid necessarily, but I let's just say I did well within a very structured system that involved leadership, competitiveness, fitness. It kind of fed all of my strengths and allowed me to unlock a lot of those things you don't know when you're 18, right? You think you know it all and you don't know anything. And so I saw it as an opportunity to, the one thing I liked about the military is that it showed you a path. It's all in writing. If you just do this, you get this. If you do this, you get this. And I thought, well, I'm always the guy that just, dangle a carrot in front of me and tell me you can't do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. So I ended up being kind of the top as I progressed, and ended up being a staff sergeant at 22 years old, which, is about 10 years young for an active duty guy. And so I accomplished a lot in a very short period of time. All the while, Sarah and I had got married at 19. And so she was, kind of the spouse at home, trying to keep all things together. No kids yet, but, trying to be a newlywed wife to a husband that was here and gone all the time. When I was home, I was training, and when I was gone, I was gone.
Yeah. And that was almost 6 years.
Yep.
Did you have anyone else in your family that was like a role model for this, or you just chose this path on your own?
No, well, my dad was a Marine, a Vietnam era Marine. And so I always had that, and I was always very interested in it. We, Midwest, blue collar, very patriotic family, I would say, from a standpoint of, bleeding red, white, and blue, so to speak. But no, really, it just became an option where I thought, from a kid that didn't really travel much, didn't really get outside of Iowa much. I'm a very adventurous person, and we didn't adventure a lot as a family, just didn't have the means to do it. And when they kind of told me through their military sales pitch that you could travel, and they didn't lie, that I thought, well, they'll teach me. I get to eat for free. I get to live for free.
Yeah.
I get to train for free. I mean, it was perfect for a guy like me at the time. And the biggest part was I get to get out of the area and kind of start fresh. And it's not like I didn't have a good place to be. But they said you can travel the world. And so I ended up going from from Iowa right to Washington State. And that's where Sarah and I lived, for about 5 years. And so you go from middle of the country to the far northwest coast, and a whole different life. And so we were able to journey together. And of course, through my travels, took me to, I think, 27 countries, in 5 years. So I got to see a good bit of the world,
I have a feeling that we were both very similar as a kid growing up in Kansas and you growing up in Iowa. All I could think about, because we didn't have the means to travel either, is like, I want to see the rest of the country. We have a huge country, so I want to see the country, but I also want to see the world. And, that's all I could think about. I don't think I got on my first plane, Jeff. I did not go to the military, although every generation of my family, from what we can find on DNA and Ancestry, we've had a generation all the way back to the Civil War, and that has, been in the military. I just, thankfully, for guys like you and my brothers and my nephews that have served, that allowed me some freedoms to get good grades so I could get those scholarships and go to college and become the first in my family to graduate from college. It allowed me to do that. But I will say that I considered the military, specifically the Air Force, at the time of graduation, because I was like, all right, I've got my degree. It's 1999. The world is ending in 2000, right?
Of course.
It's 1999. I'm going, I want to see the world. And so I considered it even after getting my degree, because a degree in 1999 was still important, but it wasn't as important as it was in 1950 and 1960. So I still didn't know quite where I wanted to go. And so that was a path, and it's a path for a lot of Midwest kids that want that opportunity to grow in a structure, become leaders, and see the world.
I think to that point, I would agree. I think it's an option, and I think anybody even listening to this, for whether they're an entrepreneur currently or a wannabe entrepreneur, or maybe have children, I think the military is just an amazing option. But to that point, again, we didn't travel a lot as a family. I got a lot of travel out of the military. Didn't know that there was going to be overseas time. I mean, we didn't have any of that in 2001. And then all of a sudden, the country had to go prove itself and make things right across the world. But, when the recruiter took me over to a map and said, you tested decent, not amazing, not bad, but right in the middle, probably. There's a lot of duty stations open to you to choose after basic training. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I had not heard about this. And so he said, we looked at the map and he said, you can go to Hawaii. We can send you to Germany. You can go to Korea. You can go to, several different duty stations across the world. And I thought, I don't know if I can do that because my parents would never be able to come. They don't have the money. They're not like world travelers. So I picked, he said, what about Washington State? I said, never been. He said, well, that's a nonstop flight from Des Moines. And I thought, really? I said, they don't even fly. I don't think they've ever been on a plane. Anyway, I chose Washington for the purpose, not just for them, but part of it was, honestly, because I thought, well, the 1 or 2 times they'll come out and see us, at least they can get there. Although when Sarah and I got married, she's like, you're telling me you could have chosen Hawaii and you didn't pick that? They can fly there too, right? I'm like, well, yeah, that's true. So
they could have just a little bit longer and a few connections potentially on that way.
So, yeah, well, Mom, I did it for you.
Yes, to Washington State. You had all these great places although state of Washington, as my good friend Eli Fisher reminds me of daily, of how beautiful Seattle and the area.
It really is. Yeah.
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 Well, first and foremost, thank you for your service. You joined at a time when our country really needed great soldiers like yourself. So thank you for your service and
my honor, privilege.
All that you and all those that allow us the freedoms to pursue these dreams. We hit the lottery. I always say this. We all hit the lottery when we were born.
Agreed.
In this country with the opportunity to come back. Now let's transition to that. You come back 6 years. You're now a civilian.
Yep.
What do you do now?
Yeah, so Sarah and I got married at 19, so we've been married now for 5 or so years. I actually took a job working. I was talking with Sarah's cousin that had a business out here in Chicago. This is back in 2004. We were talking, I guess, and email was a little bit slower when I was in Afghanistan, but we were corresponding, and he said, "Yeah, I could really use a guy with some discipline and some construction experience," which I had. And I'd offer you a job here. We could just use somebody to come in and really have some energy around the construction process we got. So I had told Sarah, and of course she trusted her family. This person actually happened to be Kevin's older brother, my business partner's older brother. So that's the family component. But so I took the job, which got us back to the Midwest, just one state east of Iowa, right? So we're now 5 hours from home, so to speak. Running a construction division for a restoration company, and honestly, it was a fine job. They paid me well for a guy that wasn't degreed, that was gritty and had some experience, but gave me a shot at doing that. And I did that. This was 2006. The market was still really, really good, which I was just learning what the real estate market was.
Right. It was
I'd
just
read a few
about
books.
to change.
It was just about to change, and the rates were still high, and the builders were over. It was just our county out here was one of the fastest growing counties, Kendall County, Illinois, fastest growing counties in the country for 10 years. The only one that competed was Dade County, Miami. And so really overbuilt. Anyway, I had done that, and then I wasn't settled. I wanted to run my own thing. I told Sarah when we got out of the military that, we really wanted something in the next chapter of our lives that would give us some freedom and flexibility. And I knew I wanted to get into my own business. I just didn't know what. And through the construction experience that I had and some of the information that I was gathering from what I was currently employed with, I then kind of behind the scenes was working on a plan to leave that job, which I did in about 8 months from starting, and then started the company here.
So let me unwind this a little bit for the listener. You go to work for this restoration company, and my guess is like mold remediation, fire and water damage,
and then I put it back together, the construction side. Yep.
So you're working on fire restoration, water restoration, what have you. Where does real estate investing come into play? You weren't working for an REI company. You were working for a restoration company doing rehab work, obviously, but not complete rehab guts.
There was this company called Amazon that started back in the late 90s. No one knew about it. It was a book company, right? It was all books. It's one of the places that would deliver to our APO, which was in the mountains of Afghanistan, Pakistan border. So I was on there and I told Sarah, I want to get some books around real estate. I really like the idea of, could I take my construction knowledge and a little bit of design? I feel like I'm a pretty good eye for that type of thing. Could we do that and kind of parlay that into real estate and be the guy that renovates the houses and flips? Like, these are all things I didn't know. And so she said, I'll find you $2. And she sent me some options. I said, yep, get me that Flipping for Dummies, because that's perfect for me. And then grabbed me the, I think Jay DeSima wrote a book, and I presented it at Collective Genius. Just basically, it's another Flipping for Dummies, but he's got a different title for it. So I'm not a reader, honestly. I'm a skimmer. Thank God for Audible. So I got those books and I actually went through them. We had some time on our hands at night and read through those. I thought, okay, this is what I should do. I should start a company. And then in the end, it says all you need is a little bit of money, and we didn't have any. So actually, Sarah is a saver, so we actually saved quite a bit of money. But I didn't know how to transition back to the Midwest to what we knew best. So I felt to take the job, which was the steady move for a young married couple, to provide some income. And so I all the while was thinking, I'll do this, I'll do it faithfully, I'll be a hard worker as I am. But I'm in my heart, I'm starting something, which was hopefully going to be this real estate company. Didn't know that in 2007 that the market was about to fall off the table. So why not jump into real estate?
You joined so you joined the military, right after or right before 9/11?
Right before.
Right before 9/11, and you get into real estate before the
life is about timing, Leon.
For a lifetime. But obviously, this has worked out for you. These big events in the United States, two major ones during our lifetime, obviously, these black swan type of events.
Yeah, they are.
How'd it go out of the gates? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are listening to this that have their own stories or thinking about making that jump. How did you start?
Yeah, so 2007, I mean, actually, I had a work van, and I was driving around to my jobs, right, doing my thing, and I just happened to notice all the time throughout the Chicago area, these little, they typically were yellow signs with black writing on them that say, real estate investor seeks apprentice. You know, if anybody was around 10 to 20 years ago, that they were around everywhere, I'm sure, around the country. Maybe they still are. I don't know. I don't look for them, but I'm not a guy, just because of all the things we talked about, Leon, with being from the Midwest, we tend to be maybe a little more skeptical. So I'm not a guy that calls on a roadside sign. I would never even think to. But I thought, I've got time. I'm in the van. I wrote down the number, and I had it with me for a week. And then I called, and it was a voicemail. And, one thing led to the next. They invited me to a meeting. I told Sarah about it, and she was a little skeptical. She said, just go. What's the risk? Anyway, I went, and they were selling a real estate product, an educational product. Through lots of conversation and prayer, we ended up purchasing this product. And, it was a game changer. I mean, we didn't actually have the money, so we borrowed a little bit or put it on our credit card, 0%. This is back when you could do the 0% transfer game, right? That a lot of us know about that are in our 40s. And so we don't pay interest, but that right then was kind of the, okay, now I think we've got an idea on what we could do. I had the books. Now I've got some practical information from some guys that have taught this. And Sarah was mildly involved from just a base level understanding of how real estate could go. And then one day I came to her and said, hey, we've got money in the bank. You've got a job and we don't have kids yet. I was basically asking her permission to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to make sure she was bought in. And she said, I think now is a great time for us to try. And she just knew that I'm a can-do guy, that if it's going to work, it's going to work. And if it's not, it wasn't meant to be. But I kind of laid out a plan and thought I'll leave my well-paying job with benefits to find a house that we can afford and renovate it and hopefully make some money. So, and by the way, this is when my business partner, Kevin, again, Sarah's cousin, Kevin is the kind of the operations manager for his brother, working at the same company. Him and I were kind of talking on the side about real estate. And Kevin, and he's in his operational mind was like, well, Jeff, do what you do and you go first. And so I'm like, okay, I'll quit. We'll do this.
Go on, Lewis and Clark. You find the way first.
Yeah. Call me if it works. And no, it was great. And then eventually he ended up leaving after we bought a property or two. Made some money, lost some money, learned a lesson. And then I thought, we've got something here, Kevin, we can do this. And so that was in 2007. And so here we are, 18 years coming in May for us.
How did you survive? I mean, it's a great American success story, especially for someone that is a skeptic by nature and calls a sign and goes and buys a product. There's not many of those people that actually do the work. You would be one of those that would have, and you did, obviously. I know that in the Midwest, especially in Kansas, we didn't feel the effects as much as Florida and Phoenix and Vegas. I can't speak for Chicago, so how did it affect Chicagoland? I'm sure the city was affected a little bit more, but how was Chicagoland in this transition of you being full-time in real estate?
Well, the area, like I said, the county that we're in, which is Kendall Partners, right? Our company name, Kendall County, real generic there, but it was really, really overbuilt at the time. Now it's just now catching up, and like most places in the country, underbuilt, underserved. But at the time, a lot of the big builders came in and were just gobbling up land and putting these, fairly large houses up, and then they sat. And so you had whole subdivisions that were going under, late 2008, 2009, as things were starting to work through the system. And so I can't really speak to how the entire market in the Chicago area operated. We were so localized because we weren't even looking at stuff that wasn't within 10 minutes. We just felt like our comfort zone is here. But what we noticed is that when we tried to buy and renovate, we made some money. We tried to buy and renovate the second time and lost $50,000. And Kevin said, this doesn't work for me. I've got to keep my job. I think at the time he was still working. And I said, well, I didn't go to school like you did, Kevin. This is my education. And we borrowed money from family, and they said, I know you'll pay us back. And again, that's another event in our journey that had that been Bank of America or a local bank, well, they're not quite as grace-filled. They're saying, yeah, we love you guys too, but we expect payment by Friday or whatever. So, of course, we're committed people, we're loyal people. We paid the money back to our family investor, and it ended up being fine. But in that moment, that could have been a fork in the road for us in terms of, it was $54,000 we lost on a second house. You couldn't get, it's like catching a falling knife, right? You just couldn't fall. The pricing was dropping so hard. You almost had to liquidate. But we took that as a moment to say, we've learned, we can get back. We didn't have much money at the time. And so I had actually found a guy that was selling a real estate product. Again, this doesn't sound like I'm skeptical, but a guy was teaching a class on short sales in Florida. And once we understood what a short sale was back in 2008, no one was talking about this. But because the area was overbuilt, everyone's in default. I say everyone. A lot of people were in default, and there's no equity, negative equity. Everyone's going backwards, right? We actually flew down there and took a course, and then a big conference room, kind of like the Collective Genius, but we sat right up front. Remember, I'm a front row guy, and Kevin's more of a back row guy. I said, Kevin, we're sitting up front. And I said, we need this. This is like, and he was serious too, but I said, this is not like let's try it and see if it works. Like, this is going to work for us. So the guy comes up and says, glad you guys are all here. Bad news is it's beautiful outside or something. And the good news is it's beautiful outside. The bad news is it's, 99% of you are going to take these 3 days and never do anything with it. But the 1% that do will crush it. And I said, Kevin, we're the 1%. So he took his system, took his approach, started mailing to notice of default, and we did so many short sales in about an 18-month period of time. Chicago Title at the time, our first American Title before that, was allowing us to dry fund all these short sales, so we didn't have to have any money, and we would just kind of transaction engineer the entire thing. We were loss mitigation experts, worked with every bank around the country, and that's what we did until we started renovating again 2 years later. So. And I should say, to make sure everybody knows this, that during that time, Kevin had gone full time with me. So now we're both entrepreneurs working out of my basement with a $10 coffee pot from Menards or Walmart, and that's it. We just said, let's go to work. Let's do it.
Bootstrapping. I love it. How did you know short sales was the way to go?
because the area was so overbuilt and there was no equity, we just kept having these conversations with people. And if you talk to a broker, they would say there's no opportunity, there's no equity, they can't make a decision to sell. So what do? Well, the options were foreclose, forbearance, do a rework with your mortgage lender. A lot of these people had second mortgages. And honestly, remember back then, banks didn't even know what to do with these things.
That's right.
That's why loss mitigation departments were built in 2009 and 10. They didn't know. So we look at it as an opportunity to say, well, they don't know. We don't know. We'll learn and they'll learn. And so I can tell you from being on the phone with all those loss mitigators across the country, that we were working together to make a deal happen. And so we just really did it locally. We just negotiated short sales with folks, families locally, and there's really no risk to them. We didn't charge a fee. The money was only made if we were able to negotiate a sale, and they signed off on it. It was full disclosure. So we liked it from that standpoint, but that allowed us to A, become confident, B, really understand our working relationship between Kevin and I, which we've always worked really, really well together. We didn't call ourselves visionary and integrator or COO, CEO back then, but we kind of knew who was who to the company, and we've never competed for that. And I think that's pretty critical for Kevin and I's relationship. He's never wanted to be me, and I've never wanted to be him, and we just know our strengths and
roles, man.
Yeah, and I don't remember a whiteboard in front of us where we kind of threw it up on there and said, you're good at this, Jeff, and I'm not good at this. And, we just naturally said, this is your giftings. This is your giftings. Let's just, you do that and I do. And so we've just continued to play to our strengths, and never really, almost 20 years of business marriage, right?
Yeah.
Never really there's no knockdown dragouts. I mean, we've got a pocket door between our offices. So yeah, we did short sales until we went right back into renovating in 2010, and then did that for 10 years.
I can truly say this. There's only a few people, and honestly, most of them have already, or will have in the first 20, 30 episodes, that have some of the best partnerships I've ever seen. And you guys, you and Kevin are one of them in this community. And it has to do with what we just, you were just defining there. That's defined roles of a, everyone uses the term of, visionary and
Right.
integrator, or CEO and COO. Marcus Krigler did a fantastic presentation, a belt-winning presentation in our community many years ago, on the 10 most common practices that he sees from the highest level real estate investors across the country. And one of those 10 was, there's always a clear, defined 1 and 2. If you look at most successful businesses, it rings true. Look at Disney, yes. Walt and Roy, look at Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I mean,
same thing.
There's always this clearly defined 1 and 2. And it doesn't mean like someone's underneath someone. It just means their defines are clearly, it's almost like a 1A and 1B. And you guys have that. And
yeah, although it's not one under another, but I do like when the organizational chart, I always ask for my box to be slightly larger than Kevin's, even if we're side by side, just so it's a little, if my font is like 18 point now. But no, it is true. And I think a common question that I get about our partnership is A, how do you make it work? And B, I thought the rule was to never go in business with family. Now, Kevin is my wife's first cousin. What I will say, and this is kind of a joke, but it's really true. When we sat down in end of 2006 and we're formulating the idea around a business, I remember sitting on the couch in Kevin's living room with his wife and my wife, and we were talking about these are people that don't know business. Kevin went to school for business. I really had no business understanding. I'm just very, very driven, and I'm willing to learn. We just said, well, they kind of made a joke between my wife and Kevin by saying, well, if anything ever happens to the business, that I basically side with Kevin, and they just were kind of joking, but like, no matter what, we're still family. So, but I think, again, going back to playing our strengths, you mentioned some other relationships in well-known businesses that have succeeded. I think that's what it is. You got to know who you are. You got to have some, I think the reason we succeed together through all these different kind of iterations of our business over almost 2 decades is we have the humility and we have the accountability, and we appreciate both. So we don't really leave conversations without the item at hand being addressed. I'll ask Kevin, give me some feedback on that. I mean, was I too firm or not good, and so I appreciate what he'll tell me because I know he loves me, right? Because there's that in our business. And so we've kind of carried that out throughout the entire organization, not necessarily to the partnership level, but we do blur the lines between personal and professional. That is some of the magic, I think, that we have in our culture. We lead that way, so it's not a surprise because that is the direction we want. Meaning we do hire family, we do hire friends, if they're qualified and their core values and they check all those boxes, then I'm like, get them on the team. So Kevin and I have been, it's really been a great thing for us to grow through all this stuff together. So I know I'm on the podcast, he's not, but there's no Kendall Partners without Kevin and myself.
So much good in that. The partnerships, obviously, a lot of people out of the gates choose a partner for a reason. Usually it's one monetarily or something along those lines. We
were both broke, so it wasn't that.
Exactly. So much good on the partnership side there. And also one other point I want to make is that, in order to scale, which you guys clearly have done, you have to have the ability to hire. You have to have the ability to set repeatable process and systems in place in order to grow and scale. And that usually is very tough for a visionary to be able to do. And so even if it's not a partner, having that person that loves the operational side will obviously help the business, because you've got one that is really driving and you got another one that's building out the process for the drive. So we can actually make sure that we can continue to grow this. But while you're doing that, the biggest point I wanted to make is that what you said about, we do blur some lines with these things and we do hire family when it makes sense for our business. A lot of people think, well, if I grow too big, I've got to be this big corporate. And that's what I'm trying to stay away from. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. Guess what? You get to build the business and the culture the way that you want to build it. And you guys clearly have done that. Mm-hmm. I see so many people, man, I don't want to scale so big where I get to be in this corporate. Well, that means that you are not setting the standard for the culture in the group. And you can, in your business, you can do that. You guys are a perfect example of that. You live and run this business the way that you want to, which allows your people to enjoy the success, and you guys work together. Everyone is rowing in the same direction, and it may not be a traditional corporate business, but it's a very successful business that has continued to grow that may not look like what people think of as traditional scale. So I didn't want to gloss over that because you guys definitely have that, and I've continued to see it grow.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point. I think it's spot on. And I think what you said there that resonates with me is, and this is what I tell other people, not because I think, I just believe it to be true, but I think when you're designing your thing, design it the way you want it.
There you go.
And just be clear about the expectations. And so Kevin and I, even though going back almost 20 years, we didn't write down our core values. No one took us through a core values exercise. But we had conversations about what's most important to us. We wanted a family-owned business. We wanted a lifestyle business. We're about the same age. He's slightly older than I am, so we're raising kids about the same time. Being both as Christians, the Lord just allowed us to line it up that way, and allowed us to put these pieces of the puzzle together. But we were pretty clear on what we wanted, without knowing exactly how to do it. But we've always been very committed to saying, well, no matter what happens, we're in it. Like when we go out and do something else in business outside of maybe this venture, we've got a few other things that we do it together. We work really well together, and Kevin always catches things that I don't. And typically I have 10 ideas and one of them might be good and 9 of them aren't good. And he's really good about saying that's the one. Right. And so someone else described it as Kevin's like the tether to my balloon. Because I'm always wanting to float off on these things. And he's like, whoa, no. Just for now, we're going to do this thing before you.
You just described to a T the book Rocket Fuel. Your job is to throw things on the wall to grow and continue to have a future vision for the business. And his job is to say, well, you threw 15 up there. That one right there, though, that's the one that we're going to use. So I know this about your business. This is a good transition to the Collective Genius. And when we met via a Zoom call, I remember this. I remember your business at the time was not common for the applications that I received. You guys wanted to grow, but you had better operations than most people that come in doing the amount of deals that you were doing, meaning that usually it's the opposite. Someone comes in, they're doing hundreds of transactions and they're going, the wheels are falling off. I really need help with operations. You guys were actually the flip-flop of that, if I remember correctly. I remember you guys having a really good operation. You had already gone through EOS.
Yes.
And you had an operating system, and you needed more deals. And not to say that people come in with applications don't say, hey, I want more deals, but most of them need help mostly with hiring and operations on that side. You guys obviously needed some tweaking and need to be better at that. But your biggest deal was leads to continue to feed the machine. But you had always had a big focus on operations, which is not common.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I remember that call as well. Actually, you mentioned Eli's name, so we'll drop him again. Give a plug for Eli. He had made that connection with the company that he was with and said, you should really talk to these guys at the Collective Genius. I'm like, the who? But through
you had no clue who we were.
I didn't. I guess maybe that's something to mention. Kevin and I both, I shouldn't say we don't pay attention, but we don't get caught up with a lot of the stuff going on maybe in our industry or just the business world necessarily, because there's so many things to like and share and watch and whatever. So one of my questions to our EOS implementer, Dan, shout out to Dan, amazing. I said, Dan, you don't know the industry like we know the industry. He's not a real estate guy. But I said, what do you think about, and I was calling them peer groups. What do you think about peer groups? There's so many of them. I was just basically doing some research on them. He said, absolutely. He said, but it's going to come down to finding the right one because everyone will take your money. He's like, find the one that will charge you probably a premium, but that will unlock the doors to, in this case, a community. And that's what it is, right? You were kind of the gatekeeper to that. And I would, and to compliment Collective Genius, I've told you this from the podium or from the stage by saying the gatekeeper mentality for what it was like, we have a great group of folks around here. And so we're going to be very protective as to who we bring in, not just anyone that can pay the membership fee. And I've always appreciated that versus fill the room with anybody that has a few bucks. But the EOS implementer was like, find a peer group. And I would say that was our rocket fuel. Kevin and I already had a working operation. We needed a community to help us. Some of it's benchmarking, some of it's testing, and some of it's having this conversation. But it's just, I would say, and I've told you, we wouldn't be here. I don't think we'd be where we are at now without the Collective Genius. I just don't see how it would be possible. Maybe in a few years, but not today.
When I think about the perfect applicant prospect for our community and what we stand for as a group, you guys are right there as a perfect, ideal avatar, ideal candidate to join our community. And here's the reason why is that you guys are always willing to share what's working. You're great fathers, husbands, just role models in general, natural leaders. But the synergy is really when we have members that come in that understand that I'm going to sit in the front row. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to get to know people. I'm not necessarily working the room, but I'm not sitting on my hands. I'm actually going to hear something that I know is low-hanging fruit that can help us. I'm now going to have a conversation and follow up and build relationships in order for us to work at the highest level. And that doesn't mean everyone is always going to absorb everything that this community offers. We hope that everyone grabs something. But you guys, so proud to say that you guys are the first ever Collective Genius members. For 10 years, we only had one group. now we have 4 different levels, and you guys are the first group ever to go from our select level to our premier level and now to our CEO level. How cool is that, man? You're the first.
It really is amazing. Jason Medley and I were talking about that a few weeks ago on a Zoom. I told you that, but I want to make one point just to go back. I remember the first time, after we had interviewed with you and you allowed us to give us our credit card to swipe it, and then come down to an event in Florida. This was COVID time, if you remember. We were in Tampa.
January 2021.
And you had introduced us to the select group as kind of a premier level. I remember the language that you used. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't mind presenting and talking to people. That's not a problem. But when you said it like that, I thought, I better bring the fire. But I remember giving you some feedback because you had asked me how it was at the end. And I thought it was awesome. I was kind of overwhelmed by the amount of sharing. I wasn't ready for that. You said that's how it was going to be, but I believed you. I just hadn't experienced it like that. But I remember telling you that I felt like I felt bad because I came, or at least it felt like I was only coming to take. I was presenting because you told me I had to, but it felt like I was doing that as a check the box, and then I was taking the information that others had. And so you've got 14 pages of notes. And over time that evolved into relationship, and then seeing how the community operates in terms of, I think my biggest feedback for Kevin when we were kind of talking about it on the plane home, I remember this conversation. I said, how is it type thing. And I was like, I just can't believe, I'm kind of overwhelmed with the amount of openness there is to talk about the business. And everyone does something slightly different. None of us do the same thing. Really, not the same area, not the same price range, it's all different. But the amount of open sharing that went on, it almost felt like I don't want to say a cheat code because there's still a lot of work, but It felt like, gosh, you could really go from where you're at to where you want to go and kind of close that gap. If it's 5 years, let's say, maybe you could do it in a year if you wanted to. And that's what we've done. That I would say that's probably how we've had the success that we've had. We've taken the advice and the support from the Collective Genius and some other partners that we use through the Collective Genius. Shout out to Gary and Susan Harper with Sharper. We've just taken it and committed to them for now 4 and 5 years, and then just continue to do it. And they're not advising us, I wouldn't say, but they're validating assumptions. And we go to work after that, and we really take it serious. So it's not just a fun time in Florida, as my wife would say. Like, honey, we're doing work, I promise.
Well, you guys definitely are. There's there's always time for fun.
Sure.
Obviously we play ball together. There's dinners, there's lunches. You said it best, and then you just said exactly how I would describe this to people is that the cheat codes are available, but just because you have the cheat code doesn't mean that overnight your business is going to change. You actually have to play the game. You actually have to use the cheat code and implement it, and use the relationships to be able to say, hey, I use this cheat code, but I'm stuck now on level 3. How do I get to level 4 to use and continue the gaming?
It's analogy. Like the game genie. Wasn't it the game genie that we stuck on the Nintendo, right? And you got to unlock everything, and I was like, oh my Lord.
You used to get the magazines. That's how old they were back in the day.
Right. It's on, honey. Let's go.
Definitely dating ourselves right now.
Yeah. So it is that, but I think it's more than that because it's not a shortcut. So, you get information and you have conversation and you build a relationship. And then of course it's upon us to go back and implement.
Yeah.
And we do it differently than others and others. Right. So it's unique to us, but I just want to be clear with everyone that's listening. It's not a shortcut. I wouldn't call it a shortcut. There's still a lot of work. You got to come out of there figuring out this is really good, but who am I now? What are we going to do with the information? It's a lot.
Yeah, it's like a diet. If you know that you need to lose weight, you have a plan. Well, you have to actually do the plan and you shed the pounds. No different than the opportunities. And you guys listened to the advice. Like I remember you had an EOS certified business coach at the time.
Yeah.
And they weren't real estate specific to that you mentioned before. And I said, not saying that you should change because it sounds like you have a great guy there, but you also within this group, you have resources that are EOS certified that are specific to real estate investing. And sure enough, within a few months, you guys hired Sharper and Gary. And I just remember those conversations, seeing those pictures of how involved you guys were, because I knew, again, if you got the structure, you would implement it.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. It's on us now. I mean, a lot of folks go out and get coaching and teaching and peer groups and everything else, and guys and gals, and then never do anything with it. And that was not acceptable to Kevin and I. It goes back to 2008 and sitting in the front row of the short sale class.
Right, 1%.
And I thought, for that 1%, I will
That's
not.
Right.
Otherwise, it doesn't work, because it won't work for anyone if it's not going to work for us. I come into that mentality. And so it's been tremendous. I mean, it's we get fired up to visit 4 times a year. And the good part, in my opinion, the fringe benefit, I guess, if you will, of being in the group is that now you have all these one-off conversations with other operators kind of above and below and shoulder to shoulder with you, so to speak. I just got off one with Phil Vaughn in Jersey, right? So we're having this conversation, and he's asking really, really good questions about, what can I do? What are you doing? It's probably very humbling for him. And I'm like, hey, man. So it's really created this network, this advisory board. And I can't say enough about it, because while we get together 4 times a year, the conversation, at least for me, doesn't stop. It's almost weekly, honestly. Every other day I'm having a text or a WhatsApp audio or a Voxer with someone, and we're just beating some type of concept up. What do you think? What do you think? And I don't know where we'd be without it, honestly. I didn't want to think. But it's been awesome.
Well, you not only are giving back, or not only taking from the community, as you said earlier, you thought, when you first came, you were taking everything, but I know in time it has paid off in droves of what you've given back. I mean, I know that the presentation that you did in front of the select group upon returning, I still have people emailing me or texting me going, hey, this presentation from Jeff is phenomenal. Thanks for recommending that I watch it. Just the journey.
Awesome.
And sharing. You gave everyone there. You're playing the game at a super high level. You have to play it. But I can tell you that this community is a game changer, because I've seen businesses like yours and Kevin's, as obviously along with hundreds of others, that if you play the game right, not only do you grow a business, but you make lifelong friendships. All right, so let's transition real quick to a give, and then we'll hit you with some quick hitters to get you out of here. So what's something right now that recently you were in the front row, you took down, and is working for you in your business right now to give to the audience that you got from Collective Genius recently?
I think I'm going to go back to a simple but difficult concept. Simple to say, difficult to implement, in my opinion. I said it earlier on, but I really think it's whether you're in the front row or in the back row. But if you're going after something you want and you're trying to learn from others, you've really got to filter it through a way to boil it down to what you want. Because typically people are running businesses. We're not franchisees. So we're not buying into someone's system and then rinse and repeat.
There's no guardrails.
Right. And so because we're entrepreneurs and we kind of have the autonomy that we all wanted, that is part of the challenge. I know, because I live that challenge of because there's no guardrails. So I think the suggestion or advice would be, when gathering this information, try not to be so overwhelmed and really filter it through. And if you've got a partner or if you've got a team, bring this to the team and say, here's what I heard, here's what I saw. I really like this concept. Like Phil and I were just talking, like we've just put our blinders on to a lot of the other stuff and said, this is a proven concept. We don't need to have a ton of outside influence anymore. We have very strategic influence, in my opinion. And then we just continue to go and get better. If everyone throughout the organization can just continue, and our organization continue to be 2% better, we'll continue to grow. And I don't want to scale all to just get to the quantity over the quality. We want to make sure we're guarding our reputation and building that. But I just think it's being very strategic with what you want and not coming in thinking, I'll just do it all, because it's not true. It's too hard.
So well
you got to
said.
at the end, you've got at least, it's, when you come back from the Collective Genius on that Thursday or that Friday or however long you stay, if you're going back to work and you're doing the thing, a lot of us are operating in our own businesses. We seep back into our day to day, and you forget about the 4 pages of notes that you had, and you're like, I'll get to it. And I think that's good, but I think you've got to really carve out a 3 or 4 hour time frame, like Kevin and I would, or Glenn, my general manager, and I would, and really go through and say, red line, all of that. That's not for now. Here's the 3 things, right, that we're going to do. I got to call this guy, and I got to do this, and then we're going to make this one change to our sales force, etc. Otherwise, you're just so overwhelmed, and then you're defeating the purpose of being in the group, because you're running so overwhelmed, and you're like, I don't know if I can come back because there's just too much. That's not what you wanted.
It can be overwhelming. You just gave, like, success leaves breadcrumbs, but if you follow too many breadcrumbs, you're going to find yourself potentially going down the wrong path, because it's not your core focus or your core business. And utilizing a team, I don't want to gloss over that. What you just said is absolutely brilliant. So simple, but so brilliant. Decompressing after a meeting, saying, all right, here's our biggest takeaways. Now let's bring our operations manager in and say, what's the lowest hanging fruit right now that'll bring us the biggest results with the least amount of effort today? What are those 1 or 2 things? Implement that, and then maybe move on to those other things that you've written down, but you have to utilize and open that notebook. If you don't, like you said, you'll just be, it's the old story of someone saying they have 20 years of experience in real estate investing, but they just keep doing the same thing every year. So they just have 1 year experience 20 times. That's exactly truly what that notebook becomes, is just things that you're not actually implementing because they have become so overwhelming, because you just haven't taken the 1 or 2 things that make the most sense for you today. That's great advice. We talked a little bit earlier, and I think there's several I can name here myself, but what do you feel like is your biggest superpower, and what's gotten you to this point as an entrepreneur?
That's a good question. I would hope, or I think that if you would ask the people that know me the best, would say that maybe from a leadership perspective, we started off the podcast here by me saying, like, we just are trying to continue to be better and continue to improve. And humbly, I'm saying, like, we're still trying to figure it out. I just keep saying that to everybody, because that's where we're at. But I think the superpower might be the initiation, or I'm kind of a go first leader. So I don't need to see somebody else do it. Typically, I will go try it, and cautiously. I'm a very cautious leader from that standpoint, because I still have a lot to lose with a family and business. So it's not willy nilly, shotgun blast. But I think it's just being a go first leader. I think that's what I was taught through Iraq and Afghanistan, and that you had to be that. And I chose to say, well, I'll do it. I'll go first, and be willing to fail, and be willing to say, even as a leader, you haven't figured it all out, but, and just owning that responsibility. And that, to me, that is what it takes to be the CEO and the co-owner, the visionary, the leader. We're on TV and radio, so I take it pretty serious. I want to make sure I'm, doing right by others, and people are looking at me and making a decision for the company, and I feel there's a responsibility there. So I just want to continue to be a go first leader that can be trusted.
That happens to be super competitive as well, and
yeah, well, that's true.
That's also something that drives you. You want to be successful, not for any other reason other than your own. You want to be the 1% in the room. And that is who you are. That is a true superpower. Like, people talk a lot about Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, which he is.
He is.
But the biggest reason I feel like he was that is because he was the most competitive player outside of Kobe Bryant that has been around in our lifetime. And there is a superpower in that, of not saying I want to show anyone up. I just want to be the best that I personally can be. And that, to me, that is all of what you just said, plus competitive equals success.
I think one other thing to add to that, Leon, is I don't know if it's a superpower, but it's a truth for sure for Kevin and I both, is that part of the reason we're successful together in whatever we do, and I use success not because we're scaling, but because the partnership works, the relationship works, is because we're both bought into a lot of things we do don't happen now, and we're playing the long game. And so we both have taken that approach with our families, with our wives, with our kids, with our relationships. In the end, to Kevin and I, that's what matters most, is the relationship. And so we don't really fight for that or struggle for that. We just know that to be the truth. So viewing things through the long range, and you're going to lose some days, right? At home, in the office, whatever, but playing the long game with that mentality of saying, yeah, but what are we going to do when we're 50 or 60 or whatever? And so we both believe in that. And so I am competitive. I do want to win, but I won't win every time.
Yeah.
And so,
get better today.
And I'm not going to sacrifice relationships all to win. That's just non-negotiable.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier a few books while you were overseas, stationed overseas. Is there anything recently? And I'm like you. I skim a lot. I read a lot, but it's very hard for me to finish a book. I do, but I enjoy reading what I need now and utilizing that versus saying, hey, I read 30 books this month. What's one recently that you've grabbed something out of that has helped you?
Yeah, I wasn't actually prepared for this one. I had you had asked about a book earlier, and I thought, man, I actually just finished one, and I think that it could be interesting for a lot of folks that would be interested in listening to our chat here. And it's called Die with Zero. I had gotten it on Audible, of course, because I'm a lazy reader, so I listen. But the guy happened to be a Hawkeye, which I am, Iowa Hawkeye. He played football there in the 80s. He's the author, and I'm drawing the name right now. But Die with Zero is the name. But in the end, the reason I like that book is it sounds like it's all about money, but it's really about when to use your money and when you can, when you can help others with it, as opposed to dying with it all and then giving it from there. The second book would be The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Patrick Lencioni is, in my opinion, a very good author and writes books in very short form, like fables. And so there's a story to listen to. And I just like that. I think that I've got it on my wall right here. And we talk about the absence of trust in our business. So as long as there's trust, this is why we like to hire people we know, or people that we know of that know. And then, because when you trust them, I just feel like you can accomplish so much more, so much quicker, because you have that commonality, and it's like, man, I trust you, I'm all in. So those two books for me, and the Bible, of course, for us, daily reading. The last book I would say is, some people don't like this book, but I actually like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. I just think there's such good principles in that. Just any walk of life, just to be a better human. It's really helped me in my relationships, and it's something I have to circle back to typically annually.
You said you weren't prepared, and you gave me 4, all good ones. Outside of this podcast, my friend, obviously people are getting to know you. I know you're not a big social media person, but if people wanted to follow Kindle Partners, your partners, your business, how would they best do that?
Yeah, you can always go to KindlePartnersLTD.com. We advertise outward facing to our customer, our sellers, as Jeff Buys Your House, which you can see on my shirt. So JeffBuysYourHouse.com is really the outward facing lead generation. You can go there. I am on Facebook. I just got out of Facebook jail after 15 months. Long story, but the old Zuck, he let me out finally after the government loosened things up, and all of a sudden he wide open. So I am on there. You can find me on there. First and last name, Jeff Nydegger. I think I've got an Instagram as well. I do like some aspects of social media, but yeah, other than that, you should be able to get to me there, and would love to chat. And of course, if you know Leon, then Leon can unlock the door to get to me directly, and would love to chat with people that are already in the community or thinking about the community. And obviously, Leon, you'll know that I'll chat with folks that are on the fence with maybe a conversation away from joining, because I think that it's good for most, and it's not for everybody, right? You've got to be a certain type of person and committed.
Well, I appreciate that, and want to thank you for your time. Obviously, busy man. I've enjoyed, the time, the 4 years that we've gotten to know each other.
Yeah, me too.
Consider you a friend. And
likewise.
like you and Kevin and Glenn, your entire team, guys, all of you are stand-up members of this organization, and I can't thank you enough for joining me here today, Jeff.
Yeah, well, likewise, for sure on that last point. It's been an honor, and it's been awesome, and I would say we're just getting started. So, yeah, thanks for having us on and letting us tell our story. It's been awesome.
Well, and we will, I'm sure over the years here, we'll have some repeat guests to bring you back to talk about the new successes in the future.
Cool.
In the meantime, everyone, I enjoyed this show. Hopefully, if you enjoyed this show, you'll go and subscribe, and do all those things. Comment. Obviously, we'd love to hear from you about the show. And then, like Jeff said, if you'd like to be in the room with members like Jeff, the easiest way to go about doing that is check us out at thecollectivegenius.com. If you're a full-time real estate investor, more than likely we have a community that's available as long as there's a good fit for each side. Fill out that application, and hopefully you'll talk to me or someone on our team on the other side. For now, that's it for today. Jeff, again, thank you. Much appreciated. Hopefully Chicago's getting warm here soon.
Coming.
Have a great rest of your day. And we will see the rest of you next week. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Are you ready to scale your real estate business? Visit thecollectivegenius.com, where real estate investors come to scale. Subscribe to the Collective Genius podcast and hit the bell icon to be notified when our next episode releases. And thanks for listening.